Welcome to this explainer. We're going to kick things off right away with a question that totally flips our fundamental assumptions. What if sleep isn't just an absence of waking, but actually the ultimate biological regulator? For centuries, we've thought of sleep as this passive state, just a simple powering down of the machine at the end of the day. But modern neuroscience, it reveals a completely different reality. Sleep is an active, hyper-complex, and absolutely crucial state that literally governs our physical, mental, and emotional survival.
So we're diving into how sleep optimization regulates our entire nervous system, from the molecular level up. We're not just going to run through surface-level tips for a better night's rest today. We're going to reason from first principles. We want to uncover the hidden mechanisms, the cellular pathways, and those hormonal feedback loops that honestly make sleep the single most important pillar of human health.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the master circadian clock. Move into the architecture of deep rest, explore the glymphatic waste clearance, look at rewiring emotion and stress, detail the price of deprivation, and finally wrap up with restoring the neural balance.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, the master circadian clock, and how it synchronizes our 24-hour biological symphony. Deep within your hypothalamus, there's this tiny region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. This is our biological pacemaker. It translates environmental light into actual genetic rhythms. Because it's located in the anterior part of the hypothalamus, the SCN is perfectly positioned to receive light and dark signals straight from our retinas. When that morning light hits your eyes, the SCN grabs that signal and broadcasts it throughout your entire body. Think of it like the conductor of an orchestra, sending signals to the autonomic nervous and neuroendocrine systems just to make sure that the peripheral clocks in your liver, your heart, and your muscles are all playing to the exact same tempo. And inside almost every cell in your body, this pacemaker is driving a stunning transcription-translation feedback loop. Basically, clock and BML1 genes create proteins that eventually turn around and inhibit their own production. It's wild. At the start of the cycle, clock and BML1 bind together to promote the creation of period and cryptochrome, or PER and cry proteins. As the day drags on, these PER and cry proteins start piling up in the cell's cytoplasm. Eventually, there's so many of them that they bind together, travel back into the cell's nucleus, and literally hit the brakes on clock and BML1. That shuts down their own production. Then, as those proteins naturally degrade overnight, the brake is released, and the whole cycle just fires back up the next morning. It's a brilliant, perfectly self-regulating 24-hour clock. Moving on to Section 2, Architecture of Deep Rest, the Rhythms of Neurological Repair.
Sleep isn't just one uniform block of unconsciousness. It's a constantly shifting ratio of distinct neurological states. About every 90 minutes, your brain cycles through these. Early in the night, NREM sleep plunges you into these deep, restorative delta waves. We're talking specifically about stages 3 and 4, which are defined by slow, synchronous electrical pulses. This is when your body is physically repairing itself. Then, as morning creeps closer, REM sleep takes the wheel. Your brain just lights up with fast, asynchronous theta waves that actually look almost identical to wakefulness on an EEG. That's where vivid dreams happen, and it's where your brain actively processes, untangles, and wires emotional memories.
Now, to plunge the brain into those restorative delta waves in the first place, we rely on a chemical tug-of-war controlled by the GABAergic system. Try to picture your brain as a chemical battlefield. On one side, you've got wake-promoting neurotransmitters like orexin, noradrenaline, and dopamine, and they are fighting to keep you alert. On the flip side, you have GABA, which is the central nervous system's main inhibitory neurotransmitter. Originating heavily from the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus in the hypothalamus, GABA swoops in, dampens those arousal signals, and gently forces the transition from chaotic wakefulness into the smooth, synchronized waves of NREM sleep. Without a properly functioning GABAergic system, the brain literally cannot quiet itself down, and that's a one-way ticket to chronic insomnia.
Let's dive into Section 3, the glymphatic waste clearance, the nightly wash. So during that deep NREM sleep, this specialized pathway called the glymphatic system kicks into gear. Honestly, this is one of the most vital discoveries in modern neuroscience. All day long, as your neurons are rapidly firing so you can think and move, they generate metabolic waste. If that waste is left to accumulate, it is highly toxic. The glymphatic system uses cerebrospinal fluid to literally power wash the brain, pushing fluid through the tissues via specialized water channels called aquaporin 4. These are located on the feet of supporting brain cells known as astrocytes.
To actually pull off this wash, the brain performs a staggering biological feat. Ready for this? Its interstitial space physically expands by a massive 60% during sleep to let that cerebral spinal fluid sweep away the cellular waste. When you drop into deep, slow-wave sleep, the physical architecture of your brain actively changes. The space between your brain cells widens out, drastically increasing the flow of fluid. It's exactly like a city opening its floodgates at night to just flush out the biochemical debris of the day.
So what exactly is it washing away? Well, highly toxic proteins like amyloid beta and hyperphosphorylated tau. These are the exact same proteins linked to severe neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. When your sleep is disrupted, those aquaporin 4 channels lose their polarization, which means they can't direct the fluid effectively. The power wash fails. The waste just builds up in the synaptic compartments, interfering with how your neurons fire. And modern neuroimaging, specifically DTI-ALPS, can literally show us this global glymphatic impairment in patients with chronic sleep disorders. So chronic sleep loss is a direct, measurable pathway to neurological toxicity.
Moving right along to Section 4, Rewiring Emotion and Stress, the Emotional Thermostat.
When you're well rested, your logical, highly evolved medial prefrontal cortex maintains strong top-down control over your amygdala, which is your primitive emotional center. It keeps your reactions proportional. It keeps them in check. But after just one single night of sleep loss, functional MRI scans show that this neurological connection is functionally severed. It's just gone. Without that regulatory break, the amygdala becomes 60% more reactive to negative or threatening stimuli. You don't just feel a bit irritable. Your brain is structurally trapped in an exaggerated state of fight or flight, viewing completely harmless situations as genuine, life-threatening dangers. And that severed emotional control, it triggers a massive physiological domino effect in the HPA axis, our body's central stress thermostat. Normally, deep, slow-wave sleep sends a nice, calming, inhibitory signal to the HPA axis, significantly lowering the release of the stress hormone cortisol. But when sleep is fragmented, the HPA axis just flares into overdrive. It floods your body with cortisol and triggers the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, like IL-6 and TNF-alpha. This hyperarousal creates a really vicious, self-sustaining loop. Psychological stress causes poor sleep, and then poor sleep causes massive systemic biological stress.
Section 5, The Price of Deprivation, a Cascade of Systemic Failures.
So when sleep is lost, we're looking at a devastating biological cascade. The emotional brakes fail, cortisol soars, inflammation runs absolutely rampant, and that crucial glymphatic wash just never happens. Pulling this all together, your immune system is actively triggering systemic inflammation, while your brain is filling up with toxic proteins. And critically, because the wake-promoting orexin system goes into overdrive trying to keep you conscious, it artificially spikes the brain's dopaminergic reward pathways. For folks dealing with substance use disorders, this neurobiological cocktail means a massive, biologically driven spike in cravings and a terrifyingly high risk of behavioral relapse.
Finally, Section 6, Restoring the Neural Balance, System Override, and Pharmacological Realities.
So, what do we do when the system breaks down and clinical intervention is required? Historically, we treated severe insomnia with drugs like traditional benzodiazepines, and those work by just broadly flooding the brain with GABA. Sure, they will reliably render you unconscious, but they actually diminish the natural architecture of deep, slow-wave sleep, and they carry a huge risk of dependence and withdrawal. But newer medications, known as dual orexin receptor antagonists, or DORAs, like daridorexant, take a fundamentally different biological approach. Instead of forcing the brain asleep by slamming on the GABA brake, they selectively block the orexin wakefulness signals. They just gently take the foot off the gas pedal. This allows the brain's natural NREM and REM cycles to unfold organically, maintaining the actual structural integrity of sleep without that high abuse potential. The clinical data for this is absolutely profound. Patients with comorbid insomnia and substance use disorders taking daridorexant achieved an incredible 65.8% abstinence rate over a 3-month period. Think back to that biological cascade we just traced. By effectively restoring natural sleep architecture, these patients weren't just getting forced unconscious rest. They were actively regulating their HPA axis, physically reconnecting their prefrontal cortex to their amygdala to handle stress, and dampening that orexin-driven dopaminergic craving. By fixing the sleep deficit safely, nearly 66% of these highly vulnerable patients maintained complete abstinence from their substance of abuse. It is a stunning testament to sleep's role as the master regulator of human behavior. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on tonight as your own brain prepares for its nightly repair. We've seen exactly how sleep regulates our molecular clocks, power washes away neurotoxic waste, and heavily wires our emotional resilience. Knowing all of that, we have to ask ourselves, if sleep is the absolute cornerstone of our biological and psychological integrity, what is the true cost of sacrificing it? Thank you so much for exploring the deep science of sleep with me. Take this knowledge and please give your nervous system the rest it truly demands.